In this clip, I'm making a tallish bowl, perhaps for two people, for a salad. I'm using 680 grams of clay, and the dimensions I'm throwing to are 19 centimetres wide by 12 centimetres tall. I've got a guide you can see to measure that while I'm working, and that's really helpful. So I'm centering and pulling up and pushing down 3 times, coning 3 times to make sure it's well centered before I start to open out the piece. So, opening out, I'm doing this carefully, keeping it quite narrow, and making sure that the base is rounded. It's not a bowl with a flat base, it's a bowl with a rounded base, and the profile of the bowl has quite a nice parabolic curve. So because it's tall, I'm making sure that the first movements are upwards. It's looking from the outside to begin with more like a cylinder than it is a bowl, but as I go on, it is going to get wider. So several upward movements, pulls to begin with, and then you can see I'm just beginning to let it move outwards now. As I do those first pull-ups to get the height, it's probably going to be taller than the finished shape. So it needs to be taller than the finished shape before I start to do the bellying, because the bellying is going to make it come down again in height. In fact, I'm making rather heavy weather of this one. I've slightly pulled it off centre at one point, and so I'm spending the rest of the throwing actually slightly correcting a mistake that I think I haven't quite made it yet there, but I think that's just about where I'm pulling it off centre there now. The important thing for me in this shape is absolutely getting the curve right and even, and that wants obviously to be the same on the inside and the outside if possible. So I want the walls evenly thick, and at the same time a rim that's round enough for me to be able to put a coat of slip on it, because this is going to be decorated with slip. It's going to be a bowl that's what I call a spiral decoration. So there's a lot of slow moving over the walls of the pot. What I'm doing is not only getting the curve right, but evening out the thickness, trying to make sure it's consistent from top to bottom. It's always going to be a bit thicker at the bottom, but you don't want any kind of lumps and bumps. It wants to be a fluid profile and a fluid kind of consistency of thickness, so that if there is a variation, that's happening gradually. I'm using a chamois leather to round off the rim, and I do that a couple of times because you want to clear away the slurry to see what it's looking like, and then as I clear away the slurry from the sides of the pots, I'm bringing it up, back up to the rim, and also I'm making that rim a bit sharp by going right up to the edge. So I will in a minute go back and use the chamois again once I've finished taking the slurry off the sides to soften that outer edge of the rim. So here I just haven't actually been satisfied that I've got the shape well enough and that the thickness is even enough. So I've decided to go over it once again, and so we'll now need to go over it once again with the rib. So the rib is not only taking off the slurry, but is also just perfecting the profile as well. It's interesting looking at myself doing this because I think I've been a bit rough in the way that I've used the rib right up to the rim. I've distorted the bowl, but it seems to have forgiven me. Now I'm just going to do an undercut to guide the wheel to be flat against the batt as I cut it off, cleaning up the batt, and now we'll finally cut the piece off, or cut through it and lift it on the batt off the wheel. And there it is, ready to work on tomorrow.